Good morning. Welcome to the community update for Thursday, April 23rd. Coming to you today from Painter Elementary School. I'm very much a listener of sports radio, and usually this time of year they like to do their porch tours where they travel around the community in different parts, really celebrating the parts of the community, celebrating the stories. And I think that it's only kind of fitting that as we move forward with these community updates, uh, there may be less and less news coming out of Harrisburg because things aren't changing. But is it time to continue to celebrate what we're doing within the Baldwin Whitehall School District and celebrating the Baldwin Whitehall School District? And by doing that, and getting around to the buildings and highlighting some of the spaces, places that we miss dearly. Painter Elementary School being one of those. It's such a grand building. I know it's had the tough times just with some of the mechanical systems and roof and things of that of late. But it's a building of such love and just such history. And so, celebrating from Painter a little bit this morning. Man, is it awful quiet here. Of course, I'm in the library, but I can still hear Mrs. Kaczynski all the way down in the office. And so, look, and there's the bells. So she said she wouldn't make any announcements on me today. So we'll see if that will happen or not. So let's jump into our agenda today. Um, first, for community positives and successes, first, Baldwin Whitehall heroes. I want to start with all of you. And maybe that sounds corny, but I really do mean it. When we look at the trends that are happening with the virus and some of those trend lines, we do seem to starting into the flattening of the curve. So social distancing is working. Staying at home while it's very difficult, it works. Wearing your mask, um, it works as well. And please do wear your mask. And those essential workers that are out there providing services to us, whether it's here within the district or whether it's out in the various businesses, their safety is just as important as everybody else. So as we talk about where I wear my mask for you, please wear your mask for me. When we enter businesses, let's make sure that we have the masks on, even if it's a bandana. I know that I've talked about this before, and my oldest, Carly, works at Dunkin' Donuts. Why that continues to be an essential business, we can debate that some other time. But the number of customers that she indicates that come in not respecting the mask order, and um, I think it's important that we keep everybody safe. So, all of you, you're my hero today. You are our heroes. Please continue your hard work because it is hard. It's a different time. It's a different way of life, um, but it's important. Number two, this is Administrative Professionals Week. Yesterday was Administrative Professionals Day, so a tribute to all of our administrative support staff in central office and the building offices and across the community. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all that you do for us. Really, because of your work and even working differently from home now, we are able to continue to move forward and provide the services for our children that are so desperately needed. So, hats off to all of our administrative professionals. Thank you for what you do. My next shout out goes to Jason Call. Jason Call is our musical director. As we know, this year's musical was not able to happen, but he's really trying to work and figure out ways to bring music and keep music really important in the children's lives. And so, yesterday afternoon, he was able to bring something really special to us. He had an interview with Renee Elise Goldsberry. Renee is Broadway television and film actress, Tony Award winner. She was present for a one-on-one chat, a one-on-one conversation between her and Jason. She was fielding questions from the students, kids that were part of the musical theater program. Some of our Perbolite students were on the call, asking different questions. It was absolutely fantastic. So, shout out to you, Jason. Even in a world of uncertainty and something that's different without a musical this year, trying to keep music at the forefront. While we're talking about music, the next shout out goes to Baldwin Whitehall, and we have the district has been named one of the best communities for music education by the National Association of Music Merchants. So we have been named one of 16 districts in Allegheny County. So there's 43 districts in the county. So we're one out of 16 within the county that have been named. But statewide, one out of 114 districts across the state that have been named best community for music education. There are 500 districts across the state of Pennsylvania, so clearly in Allegheny County there's a great concentration of great music programs, especially when you look at the percentages in Allegheny County that won compared to across the state. So definitely congratulations to our music department. Thank you so much for what you have done and continue to do. One shout out came from a parent, and I like these even when they come in just a little bit before airtime, so to speak. And so just a couple sentences from this parent. Hi, Dr. Lutz. Thanks for the communication, the twice a week format. We really like it. So thank you. I'm glad it's working for you. I want to also let you know about our positivity for the week. Our youngest son, Oliver, has really been struggling. He just has had some days where he's overwhelmed and he's really missing school with his friends and teachers. I messaged his teacher, Mrs. Pepka, to tell her that he was just having a rough day completing assignments. She called us and talked to Oliver on the phone for a little while. He enjoyed talking to her so much, and it really helped. He was able to go back to his work and watch a video of her reading the novel for ELA, English Language Arts. Being able to chat with her about his day and seeing the video of her reading really helped him when he had been missing her so much. She told me to let her know that any time that he needs to talk, and it truly meant a lot to me. Her love for the students and wanting to be there for them truly shows during all of this, and so thank you. And that comes from Miss Eckert. So those are the stories that are important. And again, I continue to stress that once we're done, once we do get back to normal, and there will be a time where we get back to normal, and we have to believe that, and we have to keep working on our social distancing so that we get there sooner than later. The things that we've done during this time hopefully will change us for the better, and we continue to move forward and do the right things. Also thinking about celebrations again. We're doing my little school tour, porch tour, so to speak. Thinking about Baldwin-Whitehall and the impact of Baldwin-Whitehall School District in the world. And this year is our 80th anniversary of the district. So the high school, the first graduating class for 1939. And even though the district existed before the Baldwin High School came a part of it, we used to send our high school children out to neighboring districts. So we worked elementary programs prior to that, but the school as it stands today, the district as a K-12 entity, a 112 entity back then, I should say, really started in 1939. So we've been celebrating the last few years with some Hall of Fame awards. We started at our 75th anniversary. This year has been our 80th, and while the formal celebrations have been cut short or changed and altered, it doesn't negate the fact that we have just such proud alumni across the region, across the state, and across the world for that matter. So one highlight I really want to talk about today a little bit in kind of a different way. It just kind of goes back to some of our combined and shared history. Dr. Regis O'Keefe is being highlighted and being inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Had a conversation via email this week with his brother, Bernie O'Keefe, and what brought us together in the conversation was, of course, basketball. I know, sports. That's my shout out to Mr. Solenday this morning. But Mr. O'Keefe, Bernie O'Keefe, graduated in 1971. He played on the 1970 team, which, from his perspective, was the greatest team in Baldwin history. I don't know. I was blessed to play on the 1985 team, and we'll just have to agree to disagree that I think the 85 team was the greatest team in Baldwin history. But the 71 team lost to Beaver Falls in the WPL championship that particular year. We lost our championship game to Latrobe, so we have many things in common. But we were talking about some of the legends of coaching back then, even though now we're working on filling the boys basketball coach, so it kind of brought us back to a little bit of that. Talking about Mr. Coach George Mazer, and he recently passed away, and we had a chance to celebrate him. Talked about Coach George Banky, who preceded Coach Mazer. Mr. Banky, Coach Banky, was larger than life, and if anyone knew him as a coach, I knew him also really as the vice principal when I went to Whitehall as a ninth grade student. And Mr. Banky was such an intimidating and imposing figure. Got a chance to sit with Mr. Banky during a retirement party, actually for Dr. Faust years later. Got a chance to see him in a whole different light, and uh, engaging, brilliant, brilliant man. And but prior to those two guys, Mr. Mazer coached for about 20 plus years. Coach Banky coached for about 15 years. But there was a coach who coached just for a very brief time, for a couple years before that, from 1954 to 1956. And his name was Coach Pete Maravich. And it was actually Peter Maravich, but he went by Press. As a kid, he delivered the Pittsburgh Press, and so he gained that nickname. So Coach Maravich only was with us for a couple of years, 1954 to 1956. And Mr. O'Keefe talked about how Coach Maravich would always bring his young son, 5 years old, to practice nearly every day. And the kid would be dribbling around in circles and all through the practice at Baldwin High School. That son went on to have great fame in basketball in his own right, Pistol Pete Maravich. And so you think about Baldwin connection, and sometimes sports brings us together, even though the absence of sports, we can still tell stories. Coach Maravich went on to coach, right after he left Baldwin, he went on to coach at Clemson, North Carolina State, and ultimately LSU. And so great things were in front of him after he left Baldwin. Hopefully Baldwin, as I always believe, provides great foundation for things that are yet to come. And so basketball stories were great this week. Some things I didn't know about, but how Baldwin and Pistol Pete Maravich have connections. And Mr. O'Keefe, thank you for sharing those with me today, or I'm sorry, this week. Some news from Harrisburg, not a whole lot. The governor's plan for reopening the Commonwealth has become a little bit more clear, if we want to call it clear. He's instituted a red, yellow, green type of plan. The full state right now is in red, which basically means closed. But there has been criteria and pushing that out to be developed to transition some segments of the state from red to yellow. The red being closed, yellow being open, but with definitely restrictions. The plan is to start in the northwest and the north central parts of the state, where the population is definitely not so dense. The criteria for moving from yellow to green, and green being close to open and close to normal, I guess is what we could say. That criteria has not been developed yet. In the urban centers, Allegheny County, Philadelphia County, around Harrisburg, of course, Scranton, those will be the last to be rolled into the process, because, of course, the rates of infection continue to be higher in those areas. But there's really not much news different in the educational front coming out of Harrisburg. We will continue to keep you informed of those things as they do develop. The equity grant update, really no change yet on the equity grant. It's under review by PDE. So maybe I was a little premature on Tuesday, but I still hold out great hope that the district will be awarded the grant money, and we can continue to be moving forward with what we need to do for our children. Just to review our planned instructional model, some changes are going to take place next week. The adjusted weekly schedule to begin, like a 4+1 schedule for Monday, so 4 days of true planned instruction, 2 days of each. It will stay the odds and the evens. We did have conversations to great lengths about like a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. It was believed that not to make that change, to stay with the odds and the evens, and to not add another wrinkle into the plans. Flex Fridays, really the focus on the review, reteach, enrichment. It can be a due date for assignments for that week. It can be the reteaching of that new instruction that happened in those first 4 days of that week. Again, why we're really looking at preventative planning to avoid our students really hitting the wall on online instruction. The stories, as I shared earlier from Ms. Eckert, I think those are the ones that are really important. There is frustration. People say, wow, it's only an hour a day. It's only 2 hours a day. But it's not the same type of work. It's different work. It can be very taxing. It can be very lonely. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the right things and we're doing it the right way. Question came up about attendance. What about attendance for Friday? It's a day of school. Just like in a normal day of school, there may be days that we do reteach and review and we don't present new instruction, but we still take attendance. And so by all means, we are taking attendance on Friday. So the processes that are in place, still continue with those. I know they're not seamless. I know they're not perfect. In fact, there's a couple questions about some of the hiccups with attendance that continue to happen. And so please bear with us. We will get through it. We'll continue to make it better. But Friday attendance is still important. And so questions. Let me jump to the questions page. And I was on there a little bit earlier today. There were not that many. I'm just looking at about 8 at this point so far. First is really not a question, but a comment. I wanted to send out a huge thank you to Mrs. Walsh at the high school for dropping off supplies for the child for the art assignment. Even with social distancing, very much appreciated. Happy to be a part of the Baldwin School District. We are happy that you're here too. Teachers go above and beyond, and yes, they do. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for caring. Is there anything number 2? Is there anything my high school student needs to do for scheduling for next year? You have not missed anything. That's the question. Did they miss anything? Did we roll anything out? The faculty is really being trained on how to do the scheduling in a more online format. Again, all that will be rolled out to everybody. Nothing has been missed. We will make sure everyone is captured as part of the scheduling process. The third question was, can students still obtain a work permit during the school closure? And if so, who is the person to contact for this? Thank you, Mrs. Sprouse, for typing a comment in there. Yes, we do want to continue moving forward with work permits where we can safely and appropriately administer those or award those. So talk to Mr. Tomaszewski at the high school. You can email him, stomaszewski@bwschools.net. Check out the district webpage for all email addresses. But yes, we are attempting to move forward with all of those processes, being work permits being one of those. Question about recording of attendance still be an issue, but child being marked absent when the child was really present. So again, reach out to the school level on that to ultimately talk to the principal. And so we will try to resolve those issues for you. Question about getting the teachers to post in one agreed upon location on the assignments. I have to try to go to 3 or 4 different places to find the assignments. And so again, I'll push these types of questions to the school level, and I'm sure it's more of a secondary type of thing where we have multiple teachers. And so we are exploring other options for some uniformity and trying to implement some of those types of suggestions, because it is important, because we have literally 320 instructors, and it's hard to have 320 different ways of doing things. I agree. If a student does not need to submit an assignment or to have review on Friday, will they still have to check in for attendance? The answer is yes. It's a day of school. So there's always something that can be done, whether it's rereading something, but it is a day of school, so you are required to check in. Here's a shout out to the Baldwin Public Library and Whitehall Public Library because it's National Library Week. Thank you for sharing. On the Baldwin Whitehall page, there's a link to both of these libraries. They are going above and beyond to provide online resources for both fun and education for children. Please check it out. The theme this year is Find the Library at Your Place, meaning at your house. Lots of good stuff. Thank you for sharing. And then the last question here. My daughter's in 7th grade, and I'd like to recommend that the parents encourage their students to attend the calls the teachers are engaging in. My daughter has now been part of a few calls, and 2 children have attended. I think these calls should be used as part of the classroom environment. They're just as the classroom environment is. Even though questions, it helps to listen to other people. It can start the conversations that the child are missing. It's a great comment. I was on a call yesterday for just trying to learn, and the question was, how are we grading? Not grading, but how are we evaluating teachers? Excuse me. And there were about 40 people on the call. Miss Salopek was on there with me. Miss Huffman was on there with me, and about 40 other folks. A lot of it was reserved for question and answer, sharing what's working, what's not working, what are people doing. The call was crickets. I think Miss Salopek was one of the only people that did ask a question, and out of the other 40 people, no one's sharing. It's not a very productive environment, and so thank you for this comment, because I think it just goes to the point that we're only going to be as good at this online instruction just as in a classroom. If a teacher's at a classroom and no one wants to share, of course the teachers have some ways, because of proximity or being in the room, that they can encourage that conversation. But it's really hard to do that in an online format. I've been in the superintendent chats and in superintendent um, webinars, and there's 43 of us across the county, and no one wants to talk, no one wants to share, and the moderator will put out different questions about, what's happening in your schools around prom or around graduation, and 2 or 3 people out of 40 want to share. Well, does that mean only 2 or 3 people have answers? Maybe. Or does that mean the other folks have answers and they don't want to share, or they don't want to be bothered by sharing? I don't know. But the conversations are what will make us better. So I think that comment's a really fitting one. So thank you for putting that out there. And the last one I'm saying here is, how can we get golf clubs from the school? I did have conversation with Mr. Sinning and Mr. Saris, because I know that there are a lot of things in our schools, and the golf clubs, from my understanding, with the First Tee of Pittsburgh, they're sitting over at Wallace, and so we do want to get those open, the building open, so we can get those things out. And again, I remember when we talked on Tuesday, things that are timely, like medication, or definitely the timeliness of things. If it's important to get those out, please let the supervisor, the coach, the assistant principal, whoever is kind of chairing up that area of activity, and then we can work with you. If we don't know what's needed, then we've not been putting effort into going into buildings. There are many districts that are just 100% shut down. No one gets in for any reason at all. While I think that might be a little bit extreme, we are not opening our doors. There will not be a floodgate of activity. So only if it's something that's absolutely necessary that we need to get out of the buildings, then we will do so. All right, for today, I wanted to shift gears a little bit, and as the update's a little bit shorter, and sharing a story. And I've been given a comment that these tend to be, or starting to look like, fireside chats with Dr. Lutz, and well, maybe as these things move on, they will become a fireside chat, literally or figuratively. But I think it's important to model what I talk about, and share some stories as well. And so I want to read a story to the little ones today. And so I hope that we've been able to get the little ones out of bed. I know it's about 9:30, and so I'd like to read a story to them. And so, as I was looking on Twitter this morning, I see that it is Dinosaur Week. And so while this isn't exactly a dinosaur, it's pretty close. Do not take your dragon to dinner is the story I'd like to read today. And the theme of this is quite appropriate for the times that we're living and working in right now. And so I hope that you can bear with me a little bit, and that this communicates well. So, do not take your dragon to dinner. Before I jump into this, while we are doing this, we've opened up a chat. The chat function's open on the stream today, and I'd like to have this. If kids do have questions, so this is really for the children. The adults, you've had your question sheet that I've been answering from, but if kids are out watching, and if they have questions about school, or if they have questions for me, I'd ask that you put those in the chat, and that we can answer those for you here as part of this. Something different. I hope it goes well. If it doesn't, then we won't do it anymore, or we'll make it better. But let's give it a shot, and we'll see how it goes. So if you have questions, please type them in. All questions and all chat need to be appropriate, and so let's give it a shot. So, do not take your dragon to dinner. Written by Julie Gassman and illustrated by Andy Elkerton. It's a special occasion. It's time for a treat. Time to dress up and go out to eat. But carefully consider your dinner's guest list. For, my dear friend, I must simply insist. Do not take your dragon to dinner. A rude guest like a dragon disturbs everyone. He barges right in. He spoils the fun. A wing in your face, a tail in your drink. And worst of all, that dragon or that distinct dragon stink. So do not take your dragon to dinner. Waiting for food, she'll get really bored, and then her behavior cannot be ignored. She'll grab for your phone, she'll crawl on the floor, she'll stand on the table, and she'll let out a roar. So do not take your dragon to dinner. You may believe that once food is in sight, your dragon will sit and be so polite. But he'll pick up his bowl and he'll drink with a slurp, and then he'll let out a fiery burp. So do not take your dragon to dinner. Dragons are known for taking big bites. When the food spills back out, it's a terrible sight. She pounds on the table. She plays with her food. She picks at her fangs. She's very, very rude. So do not take your dragon to dinner. But my dragon is so very special to me. Celebrate without him? It simply can't be. He's part of my family, part of my heart. So what can I do so we don't have to part? Ah, my friend, I sense your frustration. But dinner at home can be a grand celebration. You can ask your dragon to help with the meal. His flame can sear, his claws can peel. He can set the table, put each dish in its place. He can light the candles with incredible grace. Then at dinner, practice being polite. Sit still, use silverware, and try not to ignite. Ask him to use napkins instead of his wings. Remind him to ignore the phone if it rings. Encourage him to close his mouth when he chews. And be sure he remembers his pleases and thank yous. Practice this often, and your etiquette beginner. We will soon be taking you out to dinner. So if you think about, first of all, the grateful. Think about what we're facing now. We're so used to going out to dinner, having time away from the home, and if this is an opportunity to sit back and be part of some things at home and be a little more mindful as to what we're doing and where we're doing it. Such a great opportunity. So thank you, Mrs. Fusco, for pulling that out for me. And do not take your dragon to dinner. Absolutely, absolutely fitting. There will be a time where we can all go back to dinner. So our positive send-off today, I just really want to think about the idea of being mindful. And a couple questions. What is it like for you right now? And what wears on you? So parents, kids, think about, well, what is it like right now? And what is it that's wearing us out? What is it that's making us tired? The next question is, what's sustaining you for the moment? Where are you finding your energy? Where are you finding happiness and joy? It's important to focus on those things. Next question is, as we all face this collective difficulty, how and who do you want to be? At some point, we are going to get out of this. but who and how will I be now, and what would that look like once we're out? So the whole concept of mindfulness, it's really it's the awareness that arises when we're paying attention to the purpose, and on purpose, to the present moment. Non-judgmentally, we're just paying attention to now. And we find ourselves, at least I find myself doing that a lot more. Judy and I, Mrs. Lutz and I were out in the store, Giant Eagle, and even running through Costco recently. You're really anxious. You're really anxious being in the public spaces. We're so much more aware as to who's near us. Are they closer than 6 feet? Are they keeping their distance? Are they following the one way up the aisle at Giant Eagle? Or are they violating the... So we're so much more in tune as to what's happening around us. It's not a bad thing. And when we do get anxious, kind of focusing on ourselves a little more. Focus on that breathing. Take a couple deep breaths. We're going to be okay. We may have just been in Giant Eagle to get that Diet Coke, but we'll be able to get out of there, and we'll be able to be okay. So attention to the moment, attention to the present, and attention to our surroundings. How are you spending all the time in the world that we have now? Because there have been times that, boy, if I only had the time to do blank, I would really get into it. So my message in the Highlander Highlights this week, this month, was really talking about that. We have time now that we may not have had before. And once we take care of ourselves, finances I know are concerns, but we have time that we may have not had before because we're not running. We're not running to ball fields. We're not running to practices. We're not running to games. While we miss all of those things, it's created time. This week usually was the kickoff in my world for what really was about 50 or 60 days of evening commitments that 4 and sometimes even 5 nights a week, I would be out at different events. I would be, whether it be National Honor Society kicking things off, and it really didn't stop until we would get to commencements. And so I have found myself with so much more time in the evening, spending time, whether we're fixing things or the to-do list or whatever. But how are we going to spend this time? Because what are we going to be like once we are done, and once we do get back to some level of normal? And our time spent now will have definitely impact then. So with that, we will do another update next Tuesday. I will see you back here, at least on the computer. I'll let you know closer to Tuesday, or maybe I'll surprise you Tuesday morning as to what setting and where I'll be then. But until then, please be safe, please be kind, and continue to wear your masks. Thank you.